What is going on, you guys? Today I have another quick episode for you. So we're going to be reviewing the Dropping In podcast, and we're going over why modern men are struggling in dating. Let's get into it.
Pivoting a bit, the things that you are biggest on your YouTube channel, which I did most popular, but I also did most recent, and I see that
Great.
in the same way that we can become known for certain types of things with Charisma on Command, that there is a preferred type of content that the majority of the YouTube audience likes to see from you, which is related to dating. And it seems like it is men learning about some of the things that they're struggling with in dating with women, same thing that we see on our channel. And so I wanted to ask you if you have a high-level overview of the modern struggle. Let's start with from men and then from women's perspective. I sort of see it pop out in some of the titles, and I have my opinion of it, but I'm curious what you see on the inside.
Well, we're talking an eagle's eye view of the dating market. Is that what you're asking?
Let's say from the people on YouTube that are like consuming your content, what seems to be the problem that they are encountering?
For men, the common complaint is, where are the good women?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't get women. They're passing me by. They have a lot of, let's say, frustrated perspectives. Women just want rich guys. Women just want tall guys. They only go for the top 10%. So if you aren't a movie star, if you're not a millionaire, there's no point.
By the way, and some of that, like, it's a valid, like, I get why guys think that. The funny thing about that, right, is some of this, they're like fake options, right? So what I mean by that is like maybe a girl connected with Drake or some guy across the world on Instagram, right? So okay, like the dating market is more open, like worldwide, because of social media and dating apps, and she might get into contact with someone who's across the world, who's like a multimillionaire, blah blah blah. Now, sometimes we have the illusion of options, right? We've got all these options, but realistically, most of them, we won't end up actually following through with, end up actually talking to or getting out on a date with. And then in terms of like whether or not, let's just say, for example, whether or not a woman can keep that high status guy that's all the way across the world, or the celebrity, right, is way different than whether she'll get a DM from him or engage in some sort of casual relationship with him, right? So that's something important to keep in mind there, right? Because it's like they might not be considered as long-term relationship material or even an option for some of these people. So it's like kind of the illusion of options.
Like, the dating apps don't work. If I try to approach a woman in real life, she might think it's sexual harassment and cancel me. There's a lot of fear and anger in the masculine experience relative to dating today.
Where is that always the experience of men, or is that's a today or the last, 50 years thing, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't around 50 years ago dating.
Sure.
It seems like the game has changed significantly in the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as a man, we're still, even in today's day and age, with all of our, let's say, enlightened views of gender, sex, and power, we're still expected to initiate.
Mm-hmm.
Women still expect the men to initiate, and they still expect the man to make the offer. And that offer could be, are you up? To, can I buy you a drink? To, will you marry me?
Yeah.
It's like women are still waiting for the offer, which is really interesting, because women under 30 without children are outperforming men in that same demographic in almost every quantifiable metric, most notably in education and earning. So they're doing.
So if you didn't know, there's been a bunch of studies done, and you can look them up yourself. But basically, like, a lot of guys are foregoing college or dropping out and just entering the workforce in one way or another, while more women are getting into college, right? So like the balance is a lot more different than it used to be, and maybe in part, not fully, but in part, that might lead into more like the boss babe, corporate climbing the CEO ladder thing. But it's definitely a bigger problem. Like, realistically, I think there's some outside forces that want more people in the states or the different areas paying taxes and keeping them single rather than starting more families, right? So it's like easier to handle finances together, because like guys are happy to be the providers. And funny enough, just like a side note to this, like, you might not know this, but some guys who get into like trades, like let's say you're like, maybe like a plumber, for example. Some plumbers can make more than a lawyer or a doctor, but the lawyer or the doctor is more of a prestigious role. So a plumber might get overlooked by the quote unquote like boss babe type because of that, right? So they still think that they're like, it's weird because like they're going more competitive, right? Like almost like, and they think that a man is attracted to them being competitive and climbing the corporate ladder. Now we might appreciate a little bit of ambition, but that's not what we're interested in, right? We want like supportive, caring, nurturing, feminine, right? Like acts of kindness, more like bubbly, nice, right? Like we don't care if it's the Starbucks girl or the lawyer, right? Like we would just want her to be like a good partner, really.
Really well. And to the extent that men made the offer in the past because they had the resources and the provision to offer a life to a woman, that's becoming increasingly less salient in today's day and age. But there's still this expectation that men initiate and make the offer. And if you're making the offer, you're going to hear no a lot. Like a lot.
A lot, yeah.
I got through my training in rejection earlier in life as an actor because, again, as an actor, you get told no constantly. And it's easy to take it personally because, what are you selling? You're selling your appearance, you're selling your emotion, you're selling your performance. It's very...
I like that I use the word selling, right? Because if you've ever done any sort of like business negotiations, sales, it's constant just getting used to rejection, right? Like at first you might take it a little personally, and then eventually it'll be like this water running off your back, right? Like it's not going to bother you anymore. So it's like exposure therapy. So, guys that do ice baths, right? You get more used to like cold showers or ice baths because you do it more often. So it's cold therapy or like exposure therapy. So the same concept applies. Like guys will recommend that for if you see a cute girl in public, approaching like 3, 2, 1, go, rather than overthinking it, because that's what most guys do, right? So getting into that habit, getting used to rejection to where it doesn't bother you, and eventually you'll just be more confident going up to them anyways, and actually have more success because of that.
It's almost isomorphic with your experience of yourself, so It's very easy to take it personally.
Basically, you'll be more detached from the outcome.
You kind of have to get rejected enough to learn that it's just information, and it's necessary to get through that in order to get something worthwhile. But men might have to go on hundreds of dates. I usually say I've gone on more first dates than most people have gone on dates. But I like dating, so I don't really have a problem with that.
And so are these men frustrated that they're not finding...
By the way, I'm sure that there's someone that has commented on their video about this. If you get into the habit of going out on more dates, it will be helpful for you, right? You want to be intentional, right? So that you can find what's the right fit for you. Everybody's wants something different, right? But most of us want something pretty, it's like different and similar at the same time. So basically, what I want to say is if you end up going out on a bunch of first dates, I recommend that you take them to coffee or drinks, ice cream, boba, something inexpensive and something chill where either one of you can leave if the connection is off, right? So again, you're not like, shelling out money like a ninja for, lunch, dinner, like sushi, right? Like obviously that can rack up a bill real quick. And that's exactly why, a first date is almost like it's not even a date yet. Like you both, you're interested in each other, but you actually, this one is particularly to see if you actually want to hang out with the girl again, right? If she's actually cool and you vibe together. Because if you do, then the second date will be like the real first date, if that makes sense. It's kind of a funny way of putting it, and you can look at it however you want, but it's just kind of a helpful frame of mind because it's like, okay, like this girl's cute, but let's just do something chill and see if she's cool, right? So coffee, walk in a park, drinks, walk on the beach, easy.
Are that they're getting like no affection? Are you encountering on that online world everything from incels up to I just can't find a good woman to marry? Or where are these no's occurring is I guess at the funnel of dating?
Well, a lot of no's I think are increasingly becoming self-inflicted. And you mentioned incels. There's that study that I'm sure you're aware of that I think 30% of men under 30 have not had sex in the previous 12 months. And that's...
I haven't let that sink in. I've heard it, but that's incredible.
It's wild. And that's like tripled in the last decade. It's gone up for women too, but not nearly at the same rate. So I think a lot of men are seeing the stakes are really high. The barriers to entry they're really difficult to overcome. I am feeling hopeless. I'm going to try to turn a virtue out of a necessity and say, okay, I'm going to focus on other things in my life, which might actually be a really good strategy for men. I personally don't think that men should even think about settling down until they're in their mid-30s, because the game changes at 30 to begin to privilege men for the first time. women have a significant advantage over men in the 20s.
Well, let's talk about this. So I think there's I've seen you talk about romance on the channel, and I know that I had it. I feel so far away from it that sometimes I don't talk about it, but I have to recognize that there is a significant portion of men that didn't have that disruption of the romantic ideal that I had for my love in high school.
Sure.
That I thought if I knew her schedule so well and could find her wherever she was in the hallway and was just always there waiting for her as she needed a shoulder to cry on or someone to be there. I had my lesson early.
Well, that's what it looks like we're supposed to do from the movies.
Correct.
And I'm just meeting you today, but from following you on the channel, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you were a more socially awkward guy when you were younger.
Yeah.
And maybe like me, you took some of your cues on how you were supposed to behave relative to women from TV shows, from popular music, from Hollywood.
Yes.
And that doesn't work, man.
Yes. And I was fortunate enough to have, I think, really the disruption to that experience in my early 20s, where I found the book The Game, which I don't recommend broadly because I think there's a lot of things that you don't need to take from it, including lying about, I just saw a fight outside, or there was, a couple things happening. But the general idea in it that the way that I was approaching women and dating was flawed deeply. Mm-hmm. That was an invaluable contribution to my life, and it totally transformed it. So I had a tremendous amount of frustration prior to that. Luckily, it wasn't angry frustration. It was more internal attack.
Sure.
And then finding that busted this romantic thing. But we should take a moment to talk about like this romantic vision that it seems like a lot of men that encounter your channel might have and are breaking out of and are.
Yeah, I mean, I think most guys need this moment, right? They need like sort of like a knock on the head, of some sorts. I don't wish that on anybody, right? Like emotionally is what I mean. Like they'll have sort of like this Disney Hollywood mindset about dating, or like, oh, don't worry, sweetie. Like it's kind of like your mom telling you, like, oh, don't worry, sweetie, keep doing what you're doing. The right girl's just kind of gonna come along one day, right? And it's like what's being forgotten with that statement is what you've been doing hasn't been working, right? The definition of insanity or crazy is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So what they're talking about, right, is like getting that disruption of like the super romantic, like Hollywood nice guy idea. And there's a difference between being the nice guy and the kind and confident guy. Because the nice guy, that typically leads into is like you put yourself in the friend zone on accident, right? Because you're not displaying any intention and you're too afraid to go for it. And you're hoping that just you're going to prove to her by hanging around and being so nice for so long and listening to her like the shoulder to cry on while she's crying about another guy, that eventually she's going to come around and see that you're such a good guy. No. Right? And you're going to have multiple lessons over time to figure out like things that you might be naive to when it comes to dating dynamics, female nature, hypergamy, et cetera, right? And it's important that they're bringing this up, right? Because a lot of guys are going to go through these sort of like trials and tribulations to uncover sort of the truth in how to navigate dating for real.
Frustrated
Yes.
as they encounter that they've been lied to.
Yes. I have an episode coming out. I've recorded it, but it hasn't been published yet. And it talks about the most common male romantic fantasy, which is really hard for me to verbalize. It cuts pretty deep. In my opinion, the most common male romantic fantasy is I can be loved for who I am. Mm-hmm. Because that's deep down in his heart of hearts what every man wants to hear from a woman, is that you're enough. Just being with you is enough. I don't need anything. I'm not like those other girls. I'm just in love with who you are. And the romantic idea is the purity of my love, like the depth of my affection, my loyalty and devotion. These are not only the highest things that a man can offer a woman, but it's the things that a woman is most looking for when she's filtering men and in her own selection process in the mating and dating game. And that's really not the case. For better or for worse, men have to provide value to justify the opportunity cost associated with choosing you over all the other options within a woman's frame.
Mm-hmm. It seems like that there is still a possibility, at least from my perspective, of, let me step back. I had that disruption and I went, you know what? I got to provide value. So that means I need to get in shape. I need to learn a bunch of languages. Let's make some money. Let's get some cool experiences under my belt. Let's learn how to talk to girls, do all these things. Mm-hmm. And then there's a frustrating sense if you do that and you succeed that I had of this woman loves my persona. She loves all of the things about me. And I've lost track myself probably of my own essence in doing this. I've put on a lot of cool decorum to make myself more appealing. I am now hopeful, believing that in a committed relationship, you can get to the point where someone genuinely loves you for who you are.
I believe that, yeah.
Okay. But it's not necessarily, that's going to happen in the courtship phase because
No, it
because you
shouldn't.
don't love her for who she is. You love her for the way that she looks and what she represents sexually to you, or what she represents in your romantic brain, or something like that.
That's what I was going to say, is
Yeah.
that complaint is something that women have been duly familiar with for generations. It's like they have to wear makeup, they have to dress in a certain way, they have to perform femininity, which is a suite of behaviors that are very culturally specific. So, and if she shatters that fantasy of womanness, of femininity too early, it can jeopardize her chances of securing the desired relationship. So women have understood more about how men select them than men have understood how women select them. But more and more men are waking up to that.
Yeah. Interesting. And so there are very practical considerations.
I think something worth mentioning there, right, is like a lot of guys, you can connect that a little bit, right? Like a lot of guys, just for example, whether it's dating apps or whether it's meeting girls in person, guys will be like, oh, like, like they start to figure out like basically what the women have been going through, like, oh, like they're so superficial, like I can't get any matches on the dating app, or girls don't seem to be into me in person. And then like sometimes, not always, right, because there's certain things that could be going wrong, but one of the things could be your sense of style, could be like your grooming, could be that maybe you're not, like, it seems like you don't go to the gym, right? Like essentially what I'm trying to say, right? And I know someone's getting kind of like upset right now listening to this. I'm here for you, right? I'm trying to support you and help you get to this realization. Just as much as you see a cute girl, attractive woman, and you want to go talk to her, she has the same thought about you, right? So immediately she makes a split-second judgment, like, oh, this guy's attractive, now I want to know more, right? Of course, I'm with you, right? Like, there's more than beauty, like beauty fades, or more than, handsomeness, right? Handsomeness fades, right? Like, but you got to understand, like, that's what gets you in the door, and then afterwards she gets to find out how awesome you are, right? So that's when you get to show her, and that's exactly what they're talking about, like, you finding out how cool the girl is after you see her beauty, right? Because she might be someone who's a terrible fit for you. She might just be beautiful, and then like her personality or her character is off, so it's not a good fit long term. And the same could go for a guy, right? Like, so this is important to keep in mind, like to be realistic about it. Like, people care about how you look, right? So you want to care a little bit more, put a little bit more effort into your style, your gym, what you're eating, right? Making sure that you look clean. It's very, very normal. And I know a lot of guys, like, they have like an ego around it, but it's going to help you in the long run.
People have when they're in this partnering phase, and given dating apps and the ability to move to a big city, there's more options than ever. So the stark reality of I'm comparing you to my next best option, and that next best option is not necessarily based on deep seeing of one another's souls, but of physical attributes, financial attributes, those sorts of things.
Sure.
Got it. And that's existing at the beginning. But I also see then there are these people that they break the romantic thing, but they remain in this jaded love isn't real thing because that was true in the way that they had to do the initial phases of dating. And I don't think that that's the end of the road, which is just something that has maybe uncomfortable with some of the red pill content that I've seen in the past.
Awesome, guys. Well, so yeah, a lot of good points in there. And that last thing that he mentioned is pretty good too, right? Like you might get sort of like a knock on the head at some point, not only with like the Hollywood romantic, pop culture Disney thing, like the Fantasyland part, but you'll also probably get a little knock on the head with like a experience that hopefully doesn't keep you jaded about relationships, right? Because they talked about red pill a little bit, and so basically what you want to avoid, red pill, let me say this, right? Because I've said it before, red pill has some good knowledge in there, some good tools, like basically to understand dating dynamics, female nature, hypergamy, etc., right? So mating and dating dynamics. And it's your job, once you go through the difficult heartbreak or divorce or whatever it is, I know it's a hard situation, and I'm sorry if you're dealing with that, is to get to the point where you're no longer bitter. It's basically, you have a choice, right? You can stay a victim, and I know it sucks, right? I know it's a tough situation, but you can stay a victim and stay bitter, or you can get better, right? And you can stay in the victim part where you say, oh, I'll never have another relationship like that, or it's a scarcity mindset, right? Or like I'll never date again, right? Like, oh, it's your inner child speaking, right? You know, you're protecting yourself, which is natural. You know, it's like a survival mechanic from your brain. Now, imagine you get to the age of 90 and you're like, man, I shouldn't have been so bitter about that. I really would have loved to actually have found a great partner, a fulfilling relationship. Maybe actually find the mother of my children rather than checking out or giving up on dating. So I think that's really important to remember is like, you don't get stuck in the quote unquote like the red pill rage thing. Get to the point where you can take some accountability as well, right? Like figure out what you can control and work on to improve. And later you'll have essentially like a pair of like x-ray, glasses or goggles, right? So you can see what type of women are not the right fit for you and what the type of women are a good fit for you long term, so you can have that most fulfilling relationship in life. All right, guys. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. You got this, bro.